it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. In 2017, me and a couple of friends went to an old bell tower looking for an adventure. I could never have imagined what horror lay in wait for us. We barely made it out alive, and one of our dearest friends went missing. 5 years later, we returned to look for him. There had been recent sightings near the tower. We assembled a small crew, and against our best judgment, we went back. What happened there has scarred me physically and mentally for life. Whatever we've disturbed from the old bell tower near my house has started to affect my town, by Reggae Junkie Gee. Part 1. Well, we managed to escape again, only just. But then people started going missing around town. Everybody's keeping it all hushed up. Nobody wants to talk about what's going on, and now it seems to be spreading like wildfire. I really hope this was all over. In the week after we got out, there was a night they didn't show up outside my window, and I felt the biggest weight off my shoulders. But now things seem to be getting worse. My dad, who works in the distillery, has a shift rotation every 4 weeks. Day shift 7 AM to 3 PM, twilight shift 2:30 to 10:30 PM, and then night shift 10 PM to 7:30 AM. After Ash, Dennis, and Sean started showing up at my window, I had to tell him about it. His twilight shift started the next day, on the Monday. I begged him to believe me, but he assumed I was just talking about suspicious people hanging around after dark, and that's what he told the police. I can't say I blame him for not believing me, but it still annoyed me. My dad's work is a little over an hour away, so he sometimes gets home on a good night at 11:30. Sometimes it can be midnight before he gets in. I told him how they always show up at midnight, when the bells ring. Well, he just nodded along, only half listening. God, I'm freaking 19, not 9. I'm not lying. But he just thought I was trying to play some kind of joke. That night I heard the bells and I ran to get him. He was still awake, getting his sleeping pattern in check for the awkward shift times. We went to the window, and sure enough, I could have almost predicted what would happen. They never showed up. The bells clanging away, loud as hell, but they were nowhere to be seen. "You can at least hear the bells?" I asked, feeling annoyed that I now looked insane. Yeah. He pointed his ear to the window. "Oh yeah, I hear them. Oh, that's weird," he said, and side-glanced at me before turning away. Well, I knew he couldn't hear them. "Dad, you can't hear that. Oh, it's loud as fuck." I pressed him, feeling deflated. "Danny, get to bed, son. I'll see you in the morning." He left my room, closing the door behind him. I tried phoning Brian again for probably the 800th time, with no answer. However, on Monday, before my dad left work, I was finally able to get hold of him. "Brian, where the hell have you been?" "I've been in my bedroom with the blinds closed. I haven't left for over a week. I didn't hear the bells last night. Did you?" he asked, and his voice sounded weak. He sounded like his whole body was deteriorating. "Yeah, I heard them, but they never came to the window. I tried to get my dad to look, but they didn't show up. Well, he couldn't hear the bells either. I think I'm about one step away from being bundled into a white van and spending the next couple of years in a straitjacket." Brian laughed. "I need to get out of here, Danny. This is no way to live. If I have to look at another pot noodle, I think I'm going to have a mental breakdown. I've been shitting through the eye of a needle, man." I couldn't help but laugh. Well, the situation was far from funny. "All right, Brian, come here tonight. We can get something to eat, and you won't be by yourself. My dad starts the twilight shift soon, so it'd be good to have you here." "Aye, that sounds good. I'll get ready and I'll be over about 5. "Aye, no worries, mate. I'll see you soon." The sound of my dad getting ready to leave for work caught my attention, so I went downstairs to see him. "Dad, I know you don't believe me, but just try and get home as early as you can tonight." "I'll always try and get home early, Danny," he said with a smirk on his face. "But You know what I mean, even earlier. Just do it. Right, okay, whatever. Look, I'll be home as soon as I can. He turned to grab his work bag and keys, kissed my mum and patted my back on the way out. When the door closed, I don't know what it was, but a horrible feeling took over me. Please don't let this be the last time I see him, I thought to myself. I went back to my room, really just waiting around for Brian now. My mum kept coming in to check on me. Well, they obviously both think I've lost my mind. After 5 o'clock came and went, I started to get a bit restless, worrying. Well, I knew he'd probably just be running late, but a part of me had doubts and I didn't like it. It was giving me a bad feeling. Well, around 5:40 p.m, Brian showed up at last. I was trying my best to contact him constantly, but I never got an answer, until he was standing on my doorstep. Brian, late as ever, I gestured. Come on in. I led him into the back lounge, which is kind of like a dining room, but not really. My mum was in the adjoining kitchen making dinner, but we didn't want dinner. We wanted a feast, so we sat down and ordered loads of takeaway food. Brian seemed reluctant to talk. Well, he was giving mostly yes or no answers, or keeping answers to a 2 or 3 word minimum. It was close to 10:30 before Brian started to engage in a proper conversation. He was asking about my dad. Did you say he finished at 10:30? Yeah. I've told him to try and get away fast and come home early. He still thinks I'm a loony, though. Brian laughed. Well, hopefully he gets home sharpish. My mum popped her head into my room. I'm going to bed, boys. Good night. Good night, Brian, she said. Night, we both responded at the same time. There were a few moments of silence, and then Brian piped up again. What do you think it is? In the bell tower, I mean. Well, I haven't got the slightest idea. Some unbelievably belligerent and malicious thing that takes people. I wouldn't even know what to call it, I said, and I genuinely had no clue. People always said witches haunted that area. Maybe it's them, or maybe they summoned something or some things that got out of control. I don't know. I'm just wondering. Brian then bowed his head. Played a couple of games of FIFA before I got bored because Brian always annihilated me. Felt like we were waiting forever before I noticed the clock was finally nearing 11:30. I waited anxiously by the window, looking for my dad's car. 11:30 came and went. Nothing. 11:40. Still nothing. As the clock approached 11:50, I started to panic. Only a matter of time before the bells chime and they show up outside. God, I was pacing back and forth. Hurry up, Dad, I spoke to myself as Brian sat nervously watching me. A flash of headlights outside caught me off guard. I shot over to the window. It was the police, driving up and down the street. I looked up at the clock again. 11:55 p.m. My heart sank. Then a loud clicking of the deadbolt being unlatched and the front door opening startled me. I ran to the top of the stairs and looked down. My dad was stumbling through the doorway looking disheveled. Oh, Dad, you're finally home, and I smiled. He ambled into the hallway and glanced at me before shaking his head. He looked tired and fed up. I'm going to bed, he mumbled. I could only barely make out what he said. He climbed the stairs and pretty much pushed past me as he made his way to his bedroom, shutting the door behind him. I went back to my room where Brian was eagerly awaiting my return. Headlights then caught my attention from the window again. I saw the police car driving back and forth for another few minutes. We both eyed the clock as the second hand seemed to be in no rush to tick its way to midnight. Oh, that last 30 seconds felt like 30 minutes. 3, 2, 1. We both held our breath. I looked at Brian. The sound of the clock was all we could hear. I looked back up. 12:01 a.m. The bells didn't ring. I darted to the window and looked outside. The police car was parked about 2 houses over. There was absolutely nothing else to see. I smiled and turned to Brian. "There's nothing there," I said. I exhaled and my mind felt pure relief. Brian didn't want to believe anything too soon, but I could see the tension in his body begin to wane. I looked out again, and the police car was gone. Maybe it worked then. Maybe nothing happened because other people would find out or other people would see. I don't care. Don't care. I would finally be able to sleep worry-free, even if just for one night. Brian began to ease up some more. "Oh, maybe it's over," he said, seeming unsure of his own words. Maybe," I responded, gazing out of the window. "Oh, game of FIFA?" Brian's mood seemed to have shifted in an instant. "Honestly, man, I just want to go to sleep," I replied, and Brian laughed. "Shite bag." I smiled and looked out of the window one last time. It was 10 past midnight and still nothing. I couldn't have been happier in that moment. I set Brian up on the floor with some blankets and cushions and then switched the light off. Just before I got into bed, "Danny," Brian whispered. "What's up?" "Sorry, man, but would it be alright if we left the light on?" God, I felt so bad for him. "Just any light. I can't handle total darkness. I'm sorry, man." Well, he sounded upset. "Don't be sorry, mate. It's fine. I'll put the TV on, and I'll put my computer on," I said as I plugged my TV into the wall. "Thanks." "Yeah, no problem." I turned my PC on, fired at the monitor, then got into bed. I put a random channel on. They were showing A Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw Brian turn away from the TV. I switched it over to Comedy Central. 2 episodes of The Ricky Gervais Show and then 2 of South Park were shown in the guide. Perfect. I lay back and tried to turn my brain off. My mind was still racing, as it always was, and I'd had trouble sleeping ever since the first day in the bell tower. It was barely past 1 a.m. when the hall light went on. The slit of light at the bottom of my door caught my attention. Dad must be going for a piss, I thought to myself. My vision was a little blurry because I was about 5 seconds away from dozing off, but I could make out the shadows of feet walking down the hall towards the toilet. I closed my eyes. Footsteps coming back along the hall seemed to wake me, or was I even asleep there? Back again towards the toilet. I heard mumbling, quiet and then incoherent mumbling again. Back past my room again. And again. And then they stopped. They stopped right at my door. I looked at Brian to see if he'd noticed what was happening. All I could see were his wide eyes staring at the 2 shadows at the bottom of my door. He'd pulled the blanket up, almost completely covering his face. After a couple of very long minutes, the shadows walked away again, in the direction of the stairs. I didn't know what to think. Should I be worried? "Danny, what's going on?" Brian's muffled voice came from beneath his blanket. "I don't know. I think my dad's sleepwalking or something." "Oh, go and look." Brian jerked his thumb in the direction of the door. "Fuck off. I'm not looking," I snapped back. "So you're just going to let a random person walk around your house?" "Look, it's obviously not a random person. They came from the end of the hall. It's my mum and dad's room. There's nothing else up there." "Right. Okay." Brian didn't believe me for some reason. Well, it was my dad. I just didn't understand what he was doing or why. After about half an hour, we heard rummaging downstairs, things being moved, lots of walking around, and my dad's voice talking. I looked at Brian again. He'd fallen asleep. I just tried my best to ignore whatever he was doing and get myself to sleep. That wasn't easy, but I did eventually fall asleep. When I woke up in the morning, Brian was standing at my window looking puzzled. I rubbed my eyes as they adjusted to the brightness. "What are you doing?" Brian never looked at me. He just said, "Come here." His voice sounded weak. I climbed out of bed and made my way to the window, which looked out into my front garden and driveway. My dad, looking like he'd been up all night, almost looked like he was homeless. He was pacing around the garden, mumbling to himself, talking fast and making wild gestures that seemed to be involuntary and twitching. He just looked like a complete mess. Another thing I noticed was his car windscreen was completely shattered. I opened the window then, but Brian grabbed my hand. "Remember what William was last seen doing before he disappeared?" he asked, keeping his voice down. "Yeah, but this isn't the same. Surely, this is my dad. This isn't the same thing." I was doubting my own words as I stumbled over them. "Dad!" I called out the window. Well, he stopped immediately and looked up. "What are you doing? I thought I was the loony," I said with a slight nervous smile. He smiled back for a second, and then, without hesitation, he bolted to the car and started it up, reversed out the drive like a maniac, almost hitting another 2 cars, and then floored it down the street. We didn't know what to do or say. We just ran down the stairs and into the street, only to see his car turn left towards the town centre. "What the? We need to phone someone. The police or something," Brian said. Yeah, get inside. We need to do something, quickly." I then led Brian back into the house. My mum led us inside, looking like she'd just woken up. She had no idea what had just happened. Dad was acting weird, and he just sped away in his car with his window all smashed up. Did he say anything to you?" She looked worried. I'm like, "No, I don't even remember him coming home last night. What was he doing?" He was walking around, talking to himself. They jumped in his car and drove away. I don't even know how he can see out of his windscreen. Well, she picked up the phone and dialed 999 at once. A swift 3 hours later, 2 officers are sitting in my lounge asking my mum a series of questions, while Brian and I were standing listening at the doorway. They seemed to be taking nothing too seriously. Well, this all felt like a big, stupid waste of time. Until... I can't be 100%. Maybe I am finally losing it, but... Well, the officer taking notes and more or less nodding along to the entire conversation. I could swear he looked at me and smiled, just for a split second. A large crooked smile that seemed to disappear almost instantly, but his glowing yellow eyes burned right into mine for what felt like an eternity. It lasted less than a second, but that look is permanently imprinted in my mind and I can't shake it off. My blood ran ice cold as I watched them both get up and move slowly towards my mum as she took a sip of her coffee. Part 2. "Mum!" I yelped, holding my arm outstretched. She looked over to me, barely noticing the advancing policeman. Ryan looked shocked and confused at my outburst, like he was ready to run, but didn't know why. "Get back!" I screeched as one of the officers' glowing yellow eyes met mine. His foaming black-toothed grin gave me a feeling of being stabbed in the stomach. The room began to distort and twist. I could have sworn I was spinning, or the rest of the world was. The sun had more or less disappeared and darkness began to creep in all around me. I hunched over in pain as I watched the other officer slowly extend his hand. My mum gazed at him, seemingly in a trance-like state. I struggled to force any more words from my mouth. My mum took his hand and slowly stood up, eyes locked with the officer. "Thank you for your time, Mrs. Corcoran," he said. In a flash, I found myself on the ground, retching, feeling vulnerable and weak. I looked up. My mum was shaking hands with the policeman. "Oh, thank you so much for coming. If I hear anything, I'll phone straight away," she said. "Danny, you okay?" I looked around and saw Brian kneeling on the other side of me, looking concerned. My mum and the police officers noticed and dashed to pick me up. My mum was panicking, and the 2 officers helped me to my feet. "You all right there, son?" the older one said. Well, my head was still spinning. God, did I just imagine that? I thought to myself. "No, I'm fine. I'm okay. Just felt a bit dizzy and a bit sick," I replied. The young guy helped me to the couch. I was wary of him touching me after that smile I'd seen earlier, but He seemed normal. He seemed absolutely fine. Thanks. Honestly, I'm okay, I reassured them, while trying to motion to my mum to get them out of the house. Okay, as long as you're feeling better, the young officer said, flashing that wide grin of perfect white teeth, in contrast starkly to earlier. Could I be sure I'd seen that? Or maybe I did imagine it. I watched from the window as the two officers hastily left and got into their car. As they pulled away, the younger officer side-glanced at me and winked, his eye changing from white to yellow for a split second before they were out of view. I stood with my mouth hanging open. Brian put a finger under my chin and closed my mouth for me. What's wrong, Danny? Brian looked worried. That guy, that police guy, he was different. Different how? Brian asked. I turned and looked at him, shaking my head. Like, Belter different. His eyes and his face, something wasn't right. I began feeling the stabbing pain in my stomach once again. Maybe you just imagined it. Everything seemed fine to me. Except you almost dying, he sniggered. I don't know, man. Maybe, but I feel sick. I need to lie down a minute, and then we're going out to look for my dad. Brian quickly realized it wasn't a time for joking around. He took on a more serious demeanor. Head upstairs and lie down. I'll get you in 15 minutes. He patted my back as I walked away. Lying staring at my ceiling, I couldn't help but question my own sanity. Nothing had ever happened outside the bell tower before. Then again, Sean and the others had been showing up outside my house. Maybe whatever was in there had managed to get out somehow. I felt my eyes heavy. The bell tower plagued my mind and my senses. I felt myself beginning to doze off, and the bells rang off in the distance, and my body felt heavy. I was slipping away into sleep. I found myself standing within the perimeter of the fence. Sean was kicking the door to the bell tower. It splintered and cracked, eventually bursting open as I looked on, feeling the most unreal déjà vu. Simple as that, he chuckled as he turned to me with his face covered in black, pulsing veins. The door, the latch, and most of the wood holding it in place completely ripped off. Sean laughed like a maniac as his eyes pulled me closer towards him. I almost fell out of my bed as Brian burst in the room. Feeling any better? He asked. My head throbbed as his words rattled the inside of my brain. Oh, Danny, you look like shit, he said as he put his hand on my shoulder. Oh, I'm fine. I slapped his hand away, cold sweat pouring down my face. Well, let's just get out of here and find my dad. Look, I'm fine. Brian didn't seem convinced, however. 5 minutes later, we were roaming the streets on bikes. I had my dad's bike, and Brian had my old bike that I hadn't used for about 5 years. God, it was insanely small. It was small for me when I was 14, and he actually looked hilarious. We took turns almost at random, keeping our general direction mostly northbound, mainly because I had a bad feeling he might have ended up at the bell tower. I could feel eyes on me. I kept looking all around me. Everybody seemed to be staring at me and looking away when I'd catch them. I don't know if I was becoming paranoid or if this was really happening. I shook my head and slapped my face, focusing on the road ahead as best I could. Brian was slowing us way down, almost kneeing himself in the face with every pedal. We cycled for hours, down countless streets. No sign of my dad or his car anywhere. We'd come to the northern part of Fort William, just before you leave the town to get to Ben Nevis. There's not much around. A few streets we tried and some wooded areas. There's a smallish retail part just before you exit the town. There's a couple of supermarkets there, so we stopped at the M&S food hall to pick up something to eat and some water to take with us. We had a few more hours until night time, so we needed some supplies. I chained the bikes together and we caught our breath before heading outside. Oh, what a tune, man! Brian blurted out as we entered. Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell played throughout the supermarket's PA system, a bit too loudly in my opinion. Very apt for us, I laughed as I turned to Brian, who was grabbing a trolley. We don't really need a trolley. I mean, we're not getting much. Well, Brian looked at me. I don't care. I'm not carrying stuff. The supermarket was pretty empty, which I always prefer. God, I hate standing in queues. Before I knew it, Brian had whizzed away towards the deli aisle for some sandwiches. I headed straight for the snacks aisle, which was apparently at the other end of the shop. Well, I was walking fast, so I couldn't be dead sure, but passing the kitchenware aisle, for a split second, I could swear I saw Sean in my periphery, sliding a large blade from a knife block and staring right at me. I stopped and looked back. There was just some old guy looking at the label of a frying pan. Yes, I felt relieved, but that initial feeling of dread didn't fully go away. I found myself standing staring at the crisps, quietly singing along to the song and not being able to decide what I wanted to eat. Just as the iconic chorus sung by Michael Jackson kicked in, the lights above me flickered. I looked up. The music began to drown and fade, like I was rapidly being pulled into a tunnel. I heard something else. Humming. Someone behind me was humming with a little help from my friends by the Beatles. The hair on my neck stood up. I began feeling faint as my vision blurred. Danny, are you sure this is the right one? I froze in fear as I recognized Liam's voice. My legs began to give way, and I turned to see Liam standing holding a live magpie in his hands. His face was swollen and red. It looked like multiple chunks of flesh had been ripped off. His eyes just stared me down as I slowly got lower. And out of nowhere, a large kitchen knife was plunged into the bird, all the way through and right through Liam's hand. Sean was standing laughing wildly. Well, Danny boy, is it? Liam's dead gaze never faltered. I felt a stabbing pain in my gut. I dropped to the ground, covering my eyes and screaming for help. A hand on my shoulder startled me, and I moved away down the aisle. Danny, what's wrong, man? What's going on? I opened my eyes and saw Brian standing in front of me looking worried. The music blared through the PA, and the supermarket seemed calm. Brian helped me up. Danny, tell me what's going on, man. Oh, this has happened twice today. I barged his shoulder as I shoved past him without saying a word. I just needed to get outside for some air. Brian was right behind me and grabbed me to turn me around. Danny, whatever's happening, you need to tell me, and you need to tell me now. I sighed and looked at the ground. I saw Liam and Sean in there. Earlier today, one of the policemen looked like that demon thing, and then I see Liam and Sean in M&S. Oh, I don't know what's going on, Brian, but this thing seems to be stalking me. People are going missing and nobody's saying anything about it. I don't know what's going on. I wish I did, but I don't. Brian just glared at me with a look of guilt on his face. I'm sorry, man. This feels like this never going to end. And it feels like it's spreading. I know what you mean, Brian said. We need to find out if there's a way we can put a stop to this for good. Find out about the history of the tower. Speak to anyone who's worked there for any reason. Maintaining the land, restoration work, or anything at all. We track them down. Anyone who's had any kind of history with the bell tower. We find out as much as we can about it. Look, you never know, Danny. We might just find out exactly what we're looking for. I nodded. Brian's little motivational speech was a valiant effort. We really do need to cling on to hope, but we also need to find my dad and make sure we avoid being taken ourselves. Look, I think I know where to start, I said proudly as I looked at Brian. Right, the bell tower fence has signs on it telling you not to go in or climb the fence. They're from a security company. There's always security companies looking after old buildings like that. I'm thinking we try them. I smiled, awaiting Brian's reaction to my brainwave. But he never smiled back. So, you mean we're going back there? He said, his voice shaking. No, Brian. Well, I mean, yes, but we're not going in. We're just going to get a name or number of the company in charge of the grounds. When Brian looked down at his feet. I don't want to go, Danny. Please don't make me go. Aye, but Brian, we need to. At least come to the woods with me and I'll go in myself. I swear we're not going any further than the fence. Brian thought for a few moments. "All right, to the woods. I'm not going any further, Danny. I'm sorry. Right, to the woods. I'll be 5 minutes max." I hopped on my bike and led the way. The road was quiet and we seemed to get there in no time at all. "Right, I'll go in. I'm walking up to the fence and turning back. I'll be no more than 10 minutes, I told Brian. "Hey, I thought you said 5. "I did, but it's probably about 5 minutes each way. I'll run. Look, I'll be quick, I promise." "Okay," he said, seemingly annoyed, but we never had time to hang around arguing. I turned and ran through the woods. The bell tower quickly came into view, but that wasn't all. My dad's car sat just off to the side. The body was badly dented and the windows were all smashed. I stopped for a moment and stared. Well, there was nobody inside. Proceeding with extreme caution, I slowly made my way over to his car and looked inside. Oh, the seats were torn to shreds. I couldn't see a path into this area where a car would be able to get through. I mean, this made absolutely no sense. Then my phone buzzed. It was Brian. "Hurry up, man. Something doesn't feel right out here," he said. I'm just coming." Brian hung up without saying anything else. I opened my camera and took 2 pictures of my dad's car. And then a shrill scream came from the bell tower. I walked back around to the front of the fence and looked from top to the bottom. I saw the door gently banging off the frame as it moved freely in the wind. A large section of it was completely gone. Nothing was holding it shut. It looked exactly as it had in my dream. No lock, no latch. Well, maybe that was it. I turned and bolted back through the woods, stopping myself after about 30 seconds. The security company, I said to myself. I quickly sprinted back and pulled my phone out to take a picture of the sign attached to the fence. And when I got there, Sean, Ash, and Dennis were standing in the doorway looking at me. I slowed almost to a halt. They just stared as I crept up to the fence and held out my phone to take a photo. I made sure to try and get them into the shot to show Brian when I got back. Sean waved me over. "Danny boy, just come with us, man. You're only delaying the inevitable." Then they all laughed. I turned and ran back through the woods. I could see Brian waiting anxiously at the roadside, looking all around him. When I came out of the trees, Brian almost jumped out of his skin. "Oh, I fucking shot myself there. Where were you? I mean, you said 10 minutes. That was like..." He pulled out his phone. 13 minutes. Look, I went as fast as I could. Something's definitely going on, man. You're telling me? All I've had is shadows in the trees telling me to follow them. Well, that's the least of our worries right now. My dad's car is up at the bell tower, and I saw Sean, Ash, and Dennis up there, I explained, picking my bike up. Shit, what are they doing? How the hell did your dad's car get there? Surely that's impossible. Well, apparently not. They weren't doing much, just standing there trying to get me to go in. I got a picture of them and the car. Hey, did you get the security sign? Yeah, got that too. I pulled my phone out to show Brian the pictures. My dad's car was the first. God, that's insane, man. I can't even imagine how that's possible, Brian said, sounding as shocked as ever. Me neither. Right, look at this one. I got the next picture of the security sign up. Where are they? Brian asked, scrutinizing the photo. What? God, they were in the doorway. I zoomed in. I swear, man, they were there. I looked, dumbfounded, at my phone. Almost had a heart attack when it rang in my hand. Oh, it's my mum, I said to Brian, rolling my eyes as I turned to walk away. Hello? I answered. Hi, son. It's Mum. Just to let you know, you can come home now. Your dad's back. Part 3. What do you mean he's back? I screeched down the phone. I mean, where is he? Is he in the house? I mean, he's back. I don't know what else could have possibly have meant. I know he's not come inside yet. I just saw him out the window sitting in the garden. Just thought I'd phone and let you know. I'm about to go out and see him. No. What? Don't go out. Just stay inside, please. I had a horrible feeling she wasn't going to do what I told her, but I had to try my best. Just lock the doors and windows. Don't let him in. Just don't let him in. I'm on my way now. Why have I not to let him in? What's going on, Danny? Just don't fucking let him in, please, Mum. Don't you speak to your mother like... Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Can you just go and lock the doors now, please? And check the windows. You're scaring me, Danny. What's going... She trailed off as 3 loud knocks came at the door. Is that him? I whispered. 2 seconds. I'll go and look. Her nonchalant attitude was beginning to bug me. About 20 seconds had passed. Mum! I whispered loudly. It's him, but... Well, something's not right. Why doesn't he just come in? He's just standing there with his back facing the door. Danny, what's going on? I don't know. Just lock the door. I'll be there soon. Okay. Bye, she said as I heard the locks clicking and clacking through the phone. We rolled up slowly on our bikes. Brian was a bit behind me. The house came into view, but I couldn't see anyone in the garden. As I got closer, I could see the door was slightly ajar, and I began to worry. Brian saw too. Danny, you see that? Yeah, let's just be careful. I cautiously approached the doorway and noticed the wood had completely come away, like the 3 locks had burst right through the frame. I gently pushed the door open, with Brian practically on my back. I looked all around as we entered. I could only really see up the stairs, part of the living room and into the kitchen. We crept into the living room, and nothing seemed to be disturbed. A movement from above startled us both. I held my breath. Another movement. You should go up, Brian whispered. Oh, I don't think so. You go, I snapped back, keeping my voice hushed. The noise turned to what I can only describe as dragging footsteps. Just go to the front door. We can see up the stairs from there. I gestured for Brian to turn around and walk back to the hallway. The door was still wide open, good in case we needed to make a sharp exit. We quietly inched toward the bottom of the stairs, and as we got closer I could see feet at the top. Another step forward revealed a pair of shins. We continued like this until I was able to see enough to confirm it was actually my mum at the top, just standing there listening, leaning forward a few inches as if that somehow improves her hearing. Oh, Mum, I nearly had a heart attack, I said as we all relaxed a little. Where is he? I asked. I don't know. He kicked the door in, so I ran upstairs and hid in the cupboard. She looked pretty shaken up. Well, how long ago did he leave? I don't know. I was upstairs. I couldn't hear anything. Right, okay, Mum. This is going to sound a bit crazy, but I really need you to believe me this time. I looked deep into her eyes, and she nodded with her mouth partially open. It's not Dad. That wasn't him that came here. It's something either possessing him or mimicking him. It's something from that bell tower. I saw her face change. She was losing interest. I'm serious, Mum. This isn't a joke. Dad's car is at the bell tower, all smashed up. Look. I pulled up the pictures and showed her, and her jaw dropped slightly more. So, is he in the tower? She asked, stuttering. I don't know. I don't think so, but we need to do something to stop all this happening. People around us are disappearing and it needs to stop. She looked at Brian then. Is this all true, Brian? Please don't play games. It's true, all of it. I've seen it myself, Brian answered, turning to go back to the living room. Mum scoffed, shaking her head, and walked away. Danny. We all froze in fear. I looked up the stairs. My dad was standing at the top, black pulsing veins wrapping his face, his yellow eyes like laser beams, and felt like they could have blinded me. "Danny boy," he growled as he took one step down. I turned to my mum and Brian, who both stood still like petrified wood with their mouths gaping. "Oh, run!" I screamed, and I turned and bolted out the door, grabbing the bike. Brian was right behind me and shot off almost instantly. My mum came scurrying out, constantly looking behind her while she wailed in terror. "Come on, jump on," I ordered. She quickly got on the bike seat and gripped onto me, and I stood up on the pedals and pushed with everything I had. Then the chain came off, and we both fell in a heap on the ground. I looked at Brian first, who'd pulled over and was shouting for us to get up. Then I looked at the front door of my house. My dad was standing within the frame, almost crouching because he'd grown taller. His body looked like writhing vines wrapping themselves around him. His legs had contorted in a way that having knees wouldn't allow, and his face leaked a dark yellow and brownish fluid from every orifice. His mouth foamed and spat in anger as he stomped onto the porch with his twisted legs that almost looked like the roots of a tree. "Get back here, Brian, and get my mum," I called over, still struggling to process what was right in front of me. Brian cycled over and was there in a flash, and he helped my hysterical mum onto the seat. "What are you going to do?" Brian asked, slowly backing away from the advancing beast. "I don't know. It doesn't matter, just get her out of here now. I'll meet you at your house." My mum was visibly trembling as she climbed onto Brian's bike and they cycled off. I stood up and faced my dad. He'd stopped in the middle of the garden. A menacing low-end growl slowly escaped his lips, and he smiled his widest and stood up to full stretch. He looked about 8 or 9 feet tall, his long arms almost down to his knees. "Come and give your old dad a hug, son," he said in a crackled, demonic tone. I turned and ran as fast as I could down the street, screaming for help, screaming for anybody. He gave chase, every one of his strides seeming to move the earth. I turned the first corner and almost got smacked by a car. I stood panting with my hands on the bonnet. The driver looked terrified. I probably looked like a murderer on the run. "Help me, please." Well, the driver just stared at me, looking panicked. He threw the car into gear and reversed. I crumpled onto the road and rolled over onto my back. I just lay there, breathing rapidly, staring at the sky. The clouds gave me the feeling I was moving. Raindrops began to patter onto my head. I must have been lying there for about 5 minutes, and nothing had happened. Finally, I got myself to my feet, and I noticed how empty the streets were as I looked around. I could hear nothing but the breeze. I rounded the corner onto my street. Nothing there. I began to feel my body relax, my muscles loosen, and my mind felt relieved. Cautiously, I crept up towards my house. I could see my bike lying in the driveway. The door to the house was flapping wildly, opening and banging shut non-stop, and there was barely even any wind. I hopped over the fence and shot in to grab the bike. I picked it up, and then the door was still slamming behind me. I looked around, and the breeze had picked up. The silence of the empty streets was unnerving. I fixed the chain and cycled off in the direction of Brian's house. The rain had started to pick up now, and the streets seemed cold. Brian's face was pressed against the window when his house came into view. He saw me and waved me over. I saw my mum's head behind him, peeking over his shoulder. I practically leapt off the bike and ran inside. Brian and my mum had cups of tea and biscuits ready. "Oh, glad to see you two are all nice and cozy," I gestured. Brian's house was warm, and I was grateful for the heat. "The kettle's just boiled. Help yourself," Brian said. "Oh, I'm good. We need to get a hold of these security people, see what information we can drag out of them." "Well, what are you going to ask them?" Brian asked with a mouthful of biscuits. "I don't know, but something about the door not being able to close might be the key here. I saw something like that in my dream, the door flapping around wildly after Sean kicked it in. Then they were all standing at the door in the picture I tried to take. I don't know, but it's the best idea I have right now." I got the picture of the sign up on my phone and zoomed in. Nevis Security. Taking security to new heights. 0139 7701 333. I looked confused at the sign. New heights, I laughed, looking at Brian. I've literally never seen a single security guard or vehicle anywhere near there. What a great security company, Brian said sarcastically, shaking his head before having a drink of his tea. Anyway, let's phone him, I said, punching the number into my phone. What's this for? Who is it you're phoning? My mum butted in. It's a long story, and we don't have time, I replied, listening to the ringing intently, waiting for someone to answer. Nevis Security? A male voice came from the receiver. Yeah, hi, my name's John. I'm wondering if you can help me out with some information about the old bell tower, near Ben Nevis. What kind of information? The guy sounded stern, almost unfriendly. We were, wondering who owns the grounds, or even that building. The building and the grounds are owned and operated by the council, sir. We just make sure nobody gets in there. That's dangerous, he said proudly. I could almost imagine him sitting with his chest puffed out. I rolled my eyes and glanced at Brian. Okay, well, I saw some kids up there, and it looks like they've snapped the lock and the latch off, so the door's just wide open now. There was a long pause. He came back after about 60 seconds. Hi there. Sorry for the wait. I'm just going to put you through to my manager. He'd like to have a word with you if that's okay. Okay, no problem. Hold the line, please, sir. After a few minutes of this horrible plinky-plunky music, another man answered. His voice was more alert and intimidating. Hello there, sir. I'd like to know what it is exactly you saw at the bell tower. I don't know why, but I felt very reluctant to tell this guy anything. Well, I saw 3 kids, or more like 3 teenagers. They were standing in the doorway, and a large section of the door had been broken. It was just flapping about in the wind, I explained, not knowing what to expect. Did you not recognize any of them? He asked sharply. Well, no, I didn't recognize any of them, I lied. Okay, we'll need to make a quick report, then we'll get somebody out there to secure the building. Just a few quick questions, is that alright, sir? Yes, fine, yes. Superb, he said, and I could almost hear him smiling. I walked into the kitchen to get away from the incessant slurping of tea. The security manager kept talking. Okay, so, where did the incident take place? Bell tower, okay, I've got that. So when did this happen? What date and roughly what time? I was going through my mind trying to figure out what was happening here. All I wanted was information about the building, and suddenly I'm filing some reports. It was yesterday, probably about noon. I just said the first thing that came to mind. Great. And there were 3 teenagers? Yeah, 3. Okay, and you said you didn't recognize any of them. Was there anything else to note? Anything suspicious nearby? No. You hesitated a little bit there. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. What about your dad's car? I froze. I felt cold. Sorry? I asked shakily. Come on, Danny boy. Your dad's car was there all smashed up. I know it was, because it was me who fucking smashed it up. His voice began to change now. I can't believe you didn't recognize me, your old pal. How could you not recognize me, Danny boy? I'm so hurt. And then he let out an overly sarcastic cry. Sean? I gasped. My voice cracked and trembled. He just laughed like a maniac until I eventually ended the call. I staggered back into the living room, feeling dazed and confused. My eyes felt hot. What did they say? Brian asked. I just stood there staring. What, are you okay, son? My mum looked worried. Yeah, I'm fine, it's just... It wasn't the security. I was struggling to find my words. What does that even mean? Brian asked with a look of contempt. The security people. They're not them. The guy put me onto a manager, then out of nowhere I was talking to Sean. Brian stood up. Oh, shit. He put his hand on his forehead. We need to go to the Highland Council. The site's owned by them. Maybe they know something. What if it's just a bunch of Seans there too? Brian snapped back. Then I don't know. I know it has something to do with that door. The door needs to be sealed. We just need to find someone who can help. Hey, easier said than done, Brian said, grabbing his jacket. Mum, you'll have to just stay here. We'll go to the council building, see if there's anyone we can speak to. I'll phone if anything happens. Okay, she said, a tear streaming down her cheek. Then she gave both of us a hug. The air around town seemed thick, like it was difficult to draw a full breath. We cycled to the council building as fast as we could. It's inside an industrial estate that seemed a little too on the quiet side. There was something eerie about it. I opened the door to what appeared to be the normal bustling council HQ. I scanned the sign at the reception desk. Council house repairs, pest control, housing applications and rent inquiries, register births, deaths and marriages. Planning and building standards. That should be it, desk 7. I scanned the large open plan office building, and a tall slender man with a round head and small round spectacles sat by a desk with a huge number 7 on the front. One of us should stay and keep an eye out, I suggested. Brian looked at me. Hey, I'll go over, he said. You sure? I don't mind. I'll do it. I'll ask about getting the door sealed and see if there's any information about what's going on. If anything like this has ever happened before or whatever. Right, okay. I'll just keep watch then. If anything dodgy happens, I'll come and get you. Ryan shuffled over, looking like a nervous wreck, and sat down. The man's beady eyes seemed to be constantly darting around the room as he spoke. Something about him just seemed shifty. I scanned the room because I could feel eyes on me from somewhere. I kept catching these haunting grins in my periphery, but as I looked around, it seemed that nobody was actually looking at me. I felt like I was going mad. Brian swiftly came back over. Okay, so he told me the bell tower has a particularly dark and bloody history, and was used by occultists for some kind of brutal rituals or ceremonies and stuff, years and years ago. Apparently one of these rituals caused the building to collapse, and only the bell tower remained. Something intensely evil has been sealed inside for God knows how long. He said if the door isn't sealed, well, he doesn't actually know, but he said it's been a priority of the council for decades to keep that door sealed, pretty much forever. Brian then looked around the room. I have a bad feeling in here. He's getting one of the managers to get a hold of the people who sealed the door before. I don't know if it's some religious thing or, well, whatever it is. Hopefully... We were interrupted by a tall, well-dressed man in a side office calling Brian's name. That must be him, Brian said, quickly turning away. Right in here, sir. The man gestured to the inside of the office with a friendly smile and a nod. Then Brian disappeared inside. I scanned the room again, checking everyone out. Something wasn't sitting right. I then looked back at the door Brian had just entered. The guy was still standing there smiling and just staring at me. Hairs all over my body stood on end. His mouth grew wider and his eyes flashed a bright yellow as he turned and darted into the office, slamming the door behind him. Part 4. I dashed for the office door and grabbed at the handle. The door rattled in the frame, but it wouldn't budge. Everyone turned to look at the crazy guy screaming and frantically kicking and punching a door. I turned around. Most people looked shocked, others not so much. I felt like I could tell exactly who was real and who was not in that moment. After about 15 seconds, 2 heavy-set security officers were bounding towards me. I had nowhere to run. I didn't know what was going to happen. I closed my eyes as they grabbed me, the darkest of thoughts crossing my mind as I felt my feet dragging along the smooth tiled floor. Thrown in a heap on the rough ground, I heard cars and people talking. I opened my eyes and was genuinely surprised to find I'd been ejected from the building and told not to come back. I beat my head with my hands. Oh, fuck. I sat on the tarmac, just staring at the door. God, I'm so sorry, Brian, I muttered to myself. I sat there for 10 minutes, trying to calm myself down, just staring at the door. Not a single person went in or came out. I pulled my phone out and called my mum as I grabbed my bike. I stood ready to go while the phone continued to ring. I then tried again and she answered almost immediately. Oh, sorry, I was making tea. Is everything okay? She asked in a frantic voice. No, it's not. I'm coming to get you now. We need to get out of here as soon as possible. Grab anything from Brian's we might need. Food, bottles of water, weapons, anything you can find that might be of any use. I'll be there soon. Cycling on a bike was in no way ideal. We would need to find a car or something. My brakes squealed as I skidded almost into Brian's building. I ran inside to find my mum sitting looking nervous, holding a bag. Everything we need's in here. Where's Brian? She asked, looking behind me and out of the window. Brian disappeared. I think he got caught, I replied, not wanting to say too much. She cupped her hand over her mouth. Oh, God. We really need to go. This place isn't safe anymore. My mum nodded and threw the bag over her back, and we left to get on the bike. I cycled to Sean's house. Seeing his car parked outside gave me some hope. Surely his keys would still be inside. All I'd have to do is just go in. Stay here on the bike. Stay hidden. If you see anyone, don't let them see you. Don't make any noise. I'll be back in 5 minutes. She reluctantly agreed, looking at the ground. I'll be right back, I promise. She looked at me with sad eyes. I then turned and crossed the road, and the wind slapped my face and clouds began to draw in. Sean's door looked splintered and cracked as if someone had been trying to break it down. It was unlocked, surprisingly. I opened the door and the smell reminded me of somewhere I'd rather be able to forget. Hot, musty air filled my lungs. Walking quietly down the hall, every noise had me on edge. The hall opened up into the living room at the end, and it appeared to have been completely ransacked. Everything was turned upside down and strewn across the floor. Everything but the small coffee table in the center. I tried to focus in the dim light. There was something on the coffee table. It was Sean's keys. Immediately I felt threatened just by their presence, so perfectly placed in the middle, like they were waiting for me. Something else was happening here. I lightly stepped over the stuff on the floor, looking all around me, waiting for something. I just didn't know what. I picked up the keys, trying to stop them jangling in my hand. I looked all around me again. Still nothing there. Carefully I retraced my steps back to the hallway. The hall seemed darker now. I could barely see the end. I could tell the door was still open. The urge to sprint for it was mounting fast, but I still didn't want to make any noise. Floorboards squeaked under my feet. My heart pounded every time I approached one of the doors leading into the rooms. They were all closed. At any moment I expected one of them to burst open and for me to be dragged inside. But nothing happened. I made it to the door and I left. I then triumphantly walked outside and unlocked the car. Still feeling dubious, I made sure to check everywhere in the car and even under it before waving my mum over. She ditched the bike and climbed in the back seat and lay down with the bag. This all seemed a little, well, too easy. Those keys had been there for a reason. What that reason was, I didn't give a shit. The fact is, I now had a car, and whatever it wanted me to do, if anything, I wasn't doing it. I was going to get my foot down and leave Fort William behind. I then looked up to Sean's window. He was standing there looking out from the room I was in no less than a minute ago, waving at me with an evil-looking grin. I smiled back and threw up my middle finger at him just as I hit the accelerator. "Oh, Danny, watch out!" my mum cried. I slammed on the brakes. Ashwin and Dennis were standing in the middle of the road, only a few feet from the car, laughing. Their jagged facial features contorted and twisted to almost resemble the clown in a way. It was then I noticed they were actually wearing the clown's outfit, and they began taking steps towards us. Their arms and fingers grew longer and more pointed. I pulled the car into reverse and slammed my foot down. In my rear view, I saw my dad. His massive form seemed to have grown out of control now, like he could barely carry himself. He staggered along the road, cracking the asphalt beneath him with each step, the road itself burning and crumbling under him. I stopped the car again. I had enough room to maneuver around the other two, not so much my dad. So I threw it into gear and started screaming along the road. I had the urge to just hit them, but I didn't want to damage the car. Or maybe that's what they wanted. Their smiles growing wider as I approached. The urge was building. Just before I was about to make some Ash and Dennis bolognese, I turned the steering wheel and rounded them without incident. My mum screamed, but we were on our way. The streets were almost empty. There were some normal-looking people around, but not many. Maybe only a few cars and vans. I stopped and took out my phone. I opened maps and found the nearest city was Glasgow, 74 miles away. All the plan was, get there, get a hotel, and just try to forget about Fort William. Start again somewhere else. There was nothing I could do anymore. The town seemed to be dead, as if everyone had left, or, well, something worse. "Do you need anything from the back? Anything to eat or drink?" my mum asked from the back seat. "No, I'm too anxious, so we just need to get out of here. We go to Glasgow to stay in a hotel for a couple of nights, and we'll see what happens from there." "Oh, do you mind if I sleep? I'm drained, son," she said with her eyes already closed. "Ah, that's fine. We should be there in a couple of hours," I told her, starting the engine back up. Oh, that feeling of seeing the sign, "You're now leaving Fort William," gave me the shivers. I couldn't look back now. I might be labelled a coward or a bad friend, but there was literally nothing I can do. I can't go and seal the door myself. I can't save anyone now but myself and my mum. The drive was over so fast. No stops, nothing. It was almost 10 p.m. when we pulled into a Premier Inn car park. The city was bright and busy. Hundreds of people just walking around everywhere, not giving one solitary fuck about anyone or anything else. Well, he must have looked like we'd been dragged backwards through hell. We made our way to the reception to check in. Well, the guy at the desk was called Brian. It genuinely crushed me, even just seeing his name, and to think what might have happened to him in that room. "Oh, just 2 rooms, please. Any 2 rooms," I said, and my voice sounded coarse. "Certainly, sir. Do you prefer the rooms near each other?" he replied with a warm, inviting smile. "Just anything. If it's 2 near each other, then yeah, it doesn't really matter." I was trying to be as polite as possible despite how exhausted I was. I needed to get to bed and rest. The receptionist charged my card and promptly handed over 2 key cards and directed us to our rooms. 2 floors up, and both rooms right next to each other. I threw the bag over my shoulder and my mum put her arm around me. She seemed unsteady and also exhausted like myself. We got to her room where I took her in and helped her onto the bed. "Right, get some sleep if you can. We'll figure out what we're going to do tomorrow." She just nodded and lay back with her eyes already closed. I quietly left her room and went to mine. Oh, it was nice and cold, fresh. I turned on the TV, chucked the bag on the floor, and then went straight into the shower. Oh, the water felt amazing. I felt like I'd been running a marathon through mud, and the piping hot shower was relaxing every single muscle in my body. After my shower, I put on some shorts and a t-shirt. I lay back and let out a long overdue exhale. The stress and anxiety drained from my body and mind, and I finally felt like I could breathe normally. I put on the news to see if anything was being reported on, but nothing. I did a Google search, checked Facebook, Twitter. Not a single post or article about Fort William. I can't quite say how I felt about that. Then, listening to BBC News 24, my eyes began feeling heavy. I sank deeper into my pillow. I was on a bike, cycling through the streets of Fort William. An intense feeling of déjà vu overcame me. I saw flashes of images like a strobe effect or possibly even a lightning storm. It was raining. I saw the bell tower. The ground beneath heaved as if it were breathing, and its breathing was in time with my own. I felt drawn to the tower. I saw an image of Liam's emaciated body on the floor of the 5th floor. The door to the bell tower was slamming with force. It broke. The splintered wood got sucked inside and a deafening roar emanated from the building. The bells began to ring. I saw Sean's face grinning from his living room window and waving me off. I saw Sean's car keys on the small square table. Ash and Dennis smashing my dad's car as his dead body lay inside, almost torn apart. I cycled on and on. The bells were getting louder and louder as the rain got heavier. I suddenly realized where I was. I was cycling to Brian's house. As his house came into view, Brian's face was pressed against the window. He saw me and waved me over. I saw my mum's head behind him, peeking over his shoulder. She was smiling. Her eyes began to glow like two fiery beacons, and black veins became visible on her face. Brian had no idea. The bells rang even louder. My ears could barely withstand the noise. I stopped dead on the bike. The rain poured down my face as I just stared at them. I woke up with a start to knocking on my room door. I was soaked in sweat. The bells were still chiming, and they grew louder as I checked my phone. Midnight. Another knock at the door. "Danny, it's me," my mum called. "Can you hear the bells? Oh, please let me in, Danny. I'm scared." I got out of the bed and hastily walked to the door. I grabbed the door handle and then I stopped myself. I remembered her standing behind Brian with that grotesque face. I looked out of the peephole. She was standing a couple of feet back. Her face was twisted and jagged, and looked like it was melting. She raised her hand and waved with her long, black-pointed fingers, sporting talon-like claws. "There you are." She grinned, her voice getting noticeably deeper. She knew I was looking. I took a step back from the door. Feeling panicked, my breathing rate increased dramatically. The door shook. The ground shook. "Let me in, son. It's time. There's nowhere to run now." Her voice sounded demonic and guttural. I continued walking backwards until I tripped and fell onto the bed. "Oh, the bag," I said to myself, realizing what I'd tripped on, thinking there could be something useful inside. I opened it. It was just packed full of Polaroids. They spilled out all over the floor. Pictures of everyone. Liam, Sean, my parents, Ash, Dennis, Brian. All of them shackled to the beds from that room on the 1st floor, being tortured and their bodies being ripped to shreds. Pictures of me in various locations within the tower and in the streets. A picture of the keys on Sean's table. The fucking keys. Wanted me to take the keys. I thought I was getting away when all along it wanted me to take it somewhere else. And I have just driven it to the biggest city in Scotland. What have I done? I sat slumped on the floor. There was nowhere to hide now. The door's beginning to break, and it's only a matter of time before it gives way. I can see the cracks appearing all over. If this is the last thing I ever write, then I want this to be a warning to every one of you. Do not ever go to Fort William under any circumstances. For your own sake, stay away. If there's anyone reading this right now, should you ever find yourself in Scotland, I recommend you pay a visit to my hometown of Fort William. If you're interested, we can even arrange to meet up. I have loads to show you. So there you go, my dear friends. That is the third and, as far as I know, the final part of the Bell Tower series. I've certainly really enjoyed reading that. Hope you've been able to put up with my terrible Scottish accents for the characters. I don't know. Been around Scottish people all my life, so hopefully it's not terribly, terribly awful. And it was a lot of fun to play around doing those characters. Awesome story. Had me creeped out every episode all the way through, and I hope it was the same for you. Well, that's the Monday. Back again here on Wednesday with another long story, hopefully. So then, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams. So bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.